Looking at incomplete dominance. So far we've only seen what's known as complete dominance, where there's a dominant trait and a recessive trait, and the dominant trait completely masks the recessive trait, thus giving you only two options for offspring, those that show the dominant trait and those that show the recessive. However, we know that there are actually many different ways that genes can be expressed. The one that we're going to look at today is called incomplete dominance. First, let's have a refresher on what complete dominance is. Incomplete dominance. Remember, every person has two alleles. Sometimes alleles mask one another. This is called the dominant allele. For example, white fur can cover black fur. This is called complete dominance. So far we have seen that organisms can either be recessive and carry the recessive trait, or be showing the dominant trait and either be heterozygous or homozygous for the dominant trait. When these organisms mate, all of the offspring will either show the dominant or recessive trait with nothing in the middle. If that was the case, however, how would you explain this little guy? There's got to be a way to explain that somehow a black and white rabbit end up with a gray rabbit. We know it's possible from nature that we see sometimes a blending of traits. It's not black or white, but gray. It's not red or white, but pink. There must be a way to explain that. This way is called incomplete dominance, when the dominant trait cannot completely mask the recessive trait and you end up with a blending of sorts. What is incomplete dominance? Incomplete dominance is when you see a mixture of traits. For example, a red flower dominant mates with a white flower recessive and they have a pink flower. In incomplete dominance, because the dominant trait is somewhat weaker, it cannot completely mask the recessive trait. So instead of white or red flowers as offspring, you end up with pink flowers. This ends up to creating a mixture of offspring, with red and white being homozygous individuals and pink being the heterozygous individuals. Incomplete dominance is when the dominant trait cannot completely mask the recessive trait. Only occurs in heterozygous individuals. Let's take for example this woman. She has straight hair, and her alleles for this are big G, big G. She decides to mate with this man who has curly hair, which are little g, little g. All of the offspring are going to be heterozygous with their traits, or big G, little g, leading them to not have neither curly nor straight hair, but instead have straight hair with kind of curls at the end. This is an example of incomplete dominance. Example, a homozygous red flower, big B, and a homozygous white flower mate. All of the offspring will be big B, little b. Because the flowers are heterozygous, and it's incomplete dominance, you have pink flowers. Once again we see the pattern. Red rose with big B, mates with a white rose which has little b, little b. If we do a Punnett square, we find out that all the organisms will be heterozygous, big B, little b, and thus giving us pink flowers. Where you see this in people? Height, eye color, and skin color. In people, the genes that control height vary, thus giving a blending of the height from short to tall, or sometimes an exasperation of height, where two tall people end up having a really tall child. Eye color is another example, where depending on you end up with a wide spectrum of eye colors. So now that you've seen incomplete dominance, why is it that we get such a spectrum of traits? For example, eye color is just not blue, brown, or green. You can have different shades of green, different shades of brown, different shades of blue. It has something to do with incomplete dominance, but think about it as to why we end up with so many shades. It has something to do with the number of genes that control the trait. Thank you. Have a good one.